A man flies off the top rope, crashes through a table, and the crowd loses its mind. Nobody in that building thinks it was a fair fight. Nobody thinks the outcome was ever in doubt. And somehow, that's the whole reason they bought tickets. That should not make sense. A sport where everyone secretly knows the ending shouldn't be able to fill stadiums for over a century. But it does. To understand why, you have to go back to a version of wrestling that had nothing fake about it at all. In the coal towns of northern England in the 1800s, wrestling was a betting sport. Miners grappled after their shifts, and men wagered on who could pin who using a rough, no-nonsense style called catch-as-catch-can. Grab any hold you can, win any way you can. It traveled to American carnivals not long after, where promoters dressed it up with wild backstories and traveling strongmen who challenged locals to survive 10 minutes in the ring. Here is the problem promoters ran into almost immediately. Real wrestling is slow. Two skilled grapplers can lock up for 20 minutes without a single dramatic moment, each one waiting for the other to make a mistake. That's compelling if you understand the technique. It's murder for ticket sales if you don't. A crowd that paid for spectacle was watching something closer to a stalemate. So promoters started nudging the outcomes, quietly at first. A hooker, a wrestler who could genuinely hurt you, might be planted in the crowd to keep local challengers honest, while the featured match was already decided backstage. By the 1920s, a trio of promoters, nicknamed the Gold Dust Trio, took this further than anyone ever had. They built entire matches around pacing, tension, and multi-city storylines instead of pure athletic contest. The sport didn't disappear, it got rewritten as theater wearing a sport's clothing. And this created a strange new problem. Once the outcome was decided in advance, the business only worked if the audience never found out. So an unwritten code formed around the industry. Insiders called it Kayfabe, a shared agreement to protect the illusion at all costs, on camera and off. Wrestlers stayed in character in restaurants. Rivals who hated each other on screen were told to arrive at hotels separately, just in case a fan was watching. Reporters who called it fake risked getting physically shoved out of arenas. That's not just showbiz caution, that's an entire industry quietly agreeing to keep lying to strangers for decades and mostly getting away with it. The illusion held for a long time. Then, in February of 1989, something happened that had nothing to do with fans catching on. A representative of the World Wrestling Federation stood in front of the New Jersey State Senate and admitted on the record that wrestling matches were predetermined, not because anyone forced a confession, because if wrestling was legally entertainment instead of a real sport, it could avoid the costly regulations that boxing and other combat sports were stuck with. In other words, the business didn't drop the illusion because it wanted honesty, it dropped it because honesty was suddenly cheaper. Here's the part that should have ended the whole industry. It didn't. Fans didn't walk away. If anything, the shows got bigger. Wrestlers stopped hiding the choreography and started performing it more openly, and the crowds only leaned in harder. That tells you something the sports betting miners in Lancashire never anticipated. People weren't showing up because they believed the fight was real. They were showing up because they wanted to feel something real happen anyway. The roar when the hometown wrestler gets back up, the collective gasp at a table breaking, the villain everyone loves to hate. None of that requires an uncertain outcome. It just requires everyone in the building agreeing for a couple of hours to believe together. So picture that same man flying off the top rope tonight in some arena in front of thousands of people who know exactly how the story ends. It looks like deception. It isn't really. It's closer to a promise both sides make without saying it out loud. You perform the danger, we'll supply the belief. Professional wrestling didn't survive by fooling people for 100 years. It survived by finding the one lie an entire crowd would happily choose every single night with their eyes wide open.